What's going on? JK Sports 7. This is Kevin. Just wanted to come here real quick and bring you guys another mock draft. And I know Joel's been nailing that market and has been doing a lot of mock drafts for you guys, but I wanted to throw my hat in the ring one more time and give you guys a kind of a follow up to my last video where I took all the odd teams. As you can see here, I've taken all the even teams this time. So we're going to see how much different this draft will be compared to the other one. So without further ado, you can see the teams that I have here. We'll go ahead and start the draft and see how crazy it gets. All right, Titans, obviously no surprise. They select Cam Ward, which I know we've talked about in previous videos before. Makes all the sense in the world. I know I took Cam Ward when I was doing the odd team, so it makes sense. As far as the Browns, my first pick, I personally think with how their team is and with the quarterback room and with all the issues they've had as a franchise in that department, I personally think that with them drafting number 2 overall, you can't choose when you suck. I would say that they should absolutely draft a quarterback here. However, I don't think they're very enamored with the quarterbacks in this class. I think that with them re-signing Joe Flacco again, like they had him on the team 2 years ago, I think they would much rather go with a dynamic player here and hope that Joe Flacco can give them at least a decent season. And if not, they'll look at next year's quarterback draft class. So, looking at who's available right now, I think they get caught up in the hype. I think they look at this player and they think to themselves, you know what? We have Myles Garrett, so we don't necessarily need more pass rush. But man, it would be great to put a wide receiver opposite of Jerry Jeudy, or man, it would be great to put a cornerback opposite of Denzel Ward. So they take Travis Hunter, which can give them the best of both worlds, cornerback / wide receiver out of Colorado University. All right, Giants are going to pick Carter. No surprise there. 73% of mock drafts have the Giants taking Abdul Carter, according to mockdraftdatabase.com. So no surprise there. We're going to go ahead and reject that trade, and that trade. All right, Patriots on the board. So first quarterback's gone, first edge guy's gone, first cornerback's gone. I know a lot of different analysts that I listen to, they talk about cornerstones on your football team, right? And the cornerstones that they always talk about, they start with quarterback, and then the other 3 are a combination of corner, your edge, your top pass rusher guy, and your offensive tackle that's going to protect that quarterback. So if you go by that standard, you see that the first 3 positions out of the 4 cornerstones are already taken. So what do the Patriots do? They say, you know what? Let's get Will Campbell out of LSU to protect our investment in Drake May. Jaguars on the clock. They take another offensive tackle. I don't hate that. I know a lot of drafts have them going defense there, but they need to do something to protect their investment in Trevor Lawrence, especially since they kind of re-upped his contract. Reject that trade. Looks like the Steelers there, Joel's beloved Steelers, are in this mock trying to trade a first and second next year, and the 83rd pick this year up to number 6. We all know who that's for. We know that the Steelers desperately need a quarterback. I think that's crazy that they'd want to trade that far up. But for this mock draft, man, it's tempting. I'm actually going to reject this one. I'm going to keep the pick. Because here we are, number 6 overall, and the Raiders, who, as a Broncos fan, I'm not a particularly huge fan of them, but here they are sitting at number 6, and in this mock draft, we're going to say that no trade happens, and I know a lot of people have been talking about Ashton Jeanty. You've got Pete Carroll there, you've got, the whole, hey, he needs a Marshawn Lynch. but I kind of look at it like they need a lot on this team. You go Mason Graham here, who's arguably the best defensive tackle in the draft. You could go with Shadur Sanders here and give them a quarterback to kind of groom and learn under Geno Smith. Or you could go corner here with Will Johnson. You're in a division with Bo Nix, with Patrick Mahomes, with Justin Herbert. I think what the Seahawks ultimately do here is they're looking at their team and they're looking at their division. And one thing that they noticed in this division is that you can't necessarily beat the Chiefs in a shootout, right? You can't really stop Patrick Mahomes. And if the Bills and the Ravens and the Bengals have shown us anything in the past, it's that 9 times out of 10, the Chiefs will win that shootout, right? So I think what the Raiders do here is they want to rebuild this thing right. They don't want to rush it. They don't want to say, okay, we need to, go for the big flashy play. What they do is they look at what happened to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And what they saw in the Super Bowl was the Philadelphia Eagles with their defensive line was able to cause havoc on Patrick Mahomes and that offensive line, and it completely disrupted their offense as a whole. So, sitting there at 6 with Mason Graham right there on the board, you pair him up with Crosby, and you've got a really formidable defensive line to hopefully cause issues for Mahomes. Okay, kind of our first quote-unquote surprise of the draft. We got the Jets taking Shadur Sanders with the 7th overall pick. I don't hate that. I think Justin Fields there is is a bridge guy at best. So I think to get Shadur Sanders there, it makes a lot of sense. It's, something where they can kind of have not necessarily a quarterback competition, but if they really wanted to, they could have Justin Fields as kind of like the incumbent. And then when Shadur's ready, he and Garrett Wilson and the rest of the Jets can just kind of take off and fly. Which brings us to the Panthers. Panthers, who obviously decided that Bryce Young is their guy last year, which is not a moment too soon because this quarterback draft class is not deep by any means. So a quarterback here, if they hadn't gone with Bryce Young, would have been a reach anyway. So thankfully for them, they've decided that Bryce Young is their guy, and they're looking at this. Let's see here. I think they're looking at this and thinking in their division, they have, arguably a very weak division. The Saints seemingly are going nowhere year in and year out, just with all the stuff they've got going on. The Buccaneers are good. The Falcons, I think, are on the rise. I think because of that, they look at their team and they're like, you know what could make the biggest impact? And I think in a division with the firepower that the Falcons offense has the potential to have and what the Bucks have done, I think they look at this draft class and they say, you know what, let's go ahead and grab Will Johnson, cornerback out of Michigan, to kind of help our secondary against some of the offenses in our division. Which leads to the Saints, who take, wow, Tyler Warren. Okay. That's a little bit higher than most of the mock drafts I've seen. I think that's a great pick for them. They want to find their next Jimmy Graham. And if you think about it, I mean, what the Raiders did last year with Brock Bowers, when they arguably didn't know what they were doing as far as their quarterback went, I think this is actually a pretty good pick. Whoever's back there throwing for them, I think will be happy to have Warren on their team. Which takes us to the Bears. In my opinion, if the board falls the way it has, I think Ben Johnson runs as fast as he can to the podium to draft Ashton Jeanty to be his Chicago Bears version of Jahmyr Gibbs. He's off the board. The Niners are going to take, they take McMillan, Deebo Samuel replacement. I actually really like that pick. I think that a lot of teams have him going to the Cowboys, and with him going there, I really like him in San Francisco's offense, and I think that takes away something from what Jerry Jones was probably wanting to do. You know what? This kind of opens up something else, though. I think that Jerry Jones and his star players, it seems like everybody's always talking, everybody always has an opinion. I think where they go here is they look at their division and they know they're not going to be able to necessarily win a shootout. They need to get some stops. And I think in order to do that, you need to pressure Jalen Hurts and Jaden Daniels and, I guess you could say Russell Wilson in New York. So I think where they go here is they go to the hometown kid. They go get Mr. Stewart for Texas A&M here to help their pass rush. Oh wow, okay. Dolphins take that safety from South Carolina. I don't know if I've seen him that high. I guess what I've usually seen is Starks, the safety out of Georgia. This guy I've usually seen falling down to the mid 20s. So makes sense as a pick. Just kind of shocking to see they didn't go with Starks there. The Colts, though, I know a lot of people have Tyler Warren going there to the Colts, but with him obviously going higher to the Saints, I think the Colts look at the draft and they look at where everything is right now, and they're looking at what do we do? Do we go with the second best tight end in the draft? Do we go with potentially the best linebacker in the draft? And I think they look at their division and they see, the Texans have won the division a couple years in a row with 10 wins. You got the Jaguars with the new head coach, Titans with a rookie quarterback. I think they look at this and say, you know what? We're not necessarily going to go with a tight end here. I think if they shore up the defense, they could maybe make some moves in that division or at least go up a little bit further. And I think they can get some more weapons later on in the draft. And with Jalen Walker just sitting there, I think they got to take him. I think his slide finally ends. Falcons take edge there. I like that pick. A lot of people thought they were going to go edge last year before they took Michael Penix Jr. All right, Cardinals. What do the Cardinals do? Cardinals they're just kind of a question mark to me. But looking at how the board's fallen, they obviously don't need tight end with McBride getting his new contract. I think they're okay in the secondary. I'm looking here at Mr. Williams from Georgia. I think they could use a little bit more pass rush. I know they got um, that linebacker that the Broncos were done with last year, and I know they gave him an extension, but I think Williams on that defense really helps, especially in a division where you have Stafford aging. You have Sam Darnold now, which, if you watched the Vikings last year, the Rams and the Lions each were able to really get after him. And when you can get in Darnold's face, he kind of becomes a shell of his uh, normal self. So I feel like if they go ahead and they get Williams here, that just kind of helps them on the defensive end in their division. All right. Wow. That makes zero sense. Okay. So the Bengals pay all that money to Jamar Chase, to T. Higgins, and then decide to draft Matthew Golden in the first round. Wow, 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 wow. Okay. Don't agree with that, but that's all right. With the Seahawks, I think Kelvin Banks Jr. could have gone a lot higher in this draft, and I think the Seahawks are shocked that he's still there at 14, or sorry, 18. So I think they take him here. Buccaneers go with Starks. Really interesting pick. All right, which leads us to the Denver Broncos, my Denver Broncos. And in my opinion, with how the board's fallen, I know a lot has been made about the Broncos needing that joker role. I think that with them getting Evan Ingram in free agency, I think that shores up that issue. And I know a lot of people have them taking a running back here, like Hampton from North Carolina, for example. But what a lot of people forget is that George Payton started his general manager career as the assistant GM for Minnesota, and he was on that staff when they drafted Dalvin Cook in the second round. I think that the Broncos have been looking at this draft, And while they know there are a lot of explosive running backs that are going to be available in this draft in the first round, I believe that they've been looking at what running backs could potentially slip and fall. And I think what they want to do is they want to go kind of more or less kind of like a best player available thing instead of just drafting at a position of need. And I think George Payton, because he hit on Dalvin Cook in Minnesota, and before the injury, you could argue that he hit on Javonte Williams in Denver. Both of those were second round picks. So I think the Broncos, with how the board has fallen here, I think they go Colston Loveland, tight end, and they pick up a running back in the second round. Steelers taking an offensive tackle there. I'm sure Joel's thrilled. All right. The Chargers, I think, would have loved to have Colson Loveland on their team for their boy Herbert to throw to. So I think they're a little bit upset that that didn't happen. However, with them kind of going younger on defense and with them kind of making a lot of changes from their defense from last year, I think they go with. We're going to go with Harmon here, defensive tackle out of Oregon. I think they need some help on the defensive side of the ball. Packers get a corner. All right, the Vikings. The Vikings in a lot of drafts I've seen always take safety. And with the top two safeties off the board, I think they're kind of scrambling a little bit. Um, but Tyler Booker is, from a lot of the drafts I've seen, never here at 24. So I think they go ahead and they shore up a little bit more of their offensive line, especially after they watched what happened to Sam Darnold last year. They want to make sure that, JJ McCarthy has a little bit more time back there in the pocket. Texans take Ibuka. That's a really good pick, I think, especially with Stephon Diggs leaving. They've had some injuries back there as well, so I think that's good to kind of shore that up, which leads us to the Rams. And I think it's a no-brainer here that they draft Campbell. I think that defense was playing good enough to where they gave the Eagles a run for their money in the playoffs. I think just adding there just helps them, doesn't hurt them. Chiefs grabbing Zabel. Looks like they trade up with the Ravens there in this draft, which you can't blame them for that. They've had a lot of issues there in their offensive line. The Lions, though, I think what they do here is I think they take Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee. I think they need some, you could argue that they needed some help last year on defense, but their entire defense was hurt and on injured reserve at some point. So I think just adding to that side of the ball helps. It gives them more options, especially with Hutchinson coming back. Just putting more on that side of the ball would help. I think their offense is fine. I think their offense proved that they can score at will. I think their defense, when healthy, is a lot better than the unit we saw on the field late last year. But I think adding doesn't hurt at all in that division, especially. Commanders going wide receiver. That's crazy. So they already have a pretty, in my opinion, potent offense. I'm surprised that in this draft they kind of add there. I would have thought they would have gone edge. That's all right, though. Bills are on the board and we keep moving. So I think looking at how this board's fallen, I think with as many wide receivers off the board as there are, I don't think they necessarily reach there. I know they need some help on the defensive side of the ball, but I think they do kind of a wild pick here, and even though it's not necessarily a position of need, I think they go ahead and draft Hampton out of North Carolina to just give Josh Allen, their MVP, just a little bit more options there. 49ers go defense, and the Eagles, here they are. What shall they do? Fresh off a Super Bowl where they annihilated the Chiefs. I think they add to that defense. You've got this edge guy out of Texas A&M who I know Joel's been kind of high on him in some of his videos he's done. I think honestly, I think that the 32nd spot would be a place where like teams would probably trade up to get a quarterback here. The reason is with the Browns going with Travis Hunter with the second overall pick, they have the first pick on day 2. So I actually think the Eagles will be trading out of the spot. But for the purpose of this draft, we're going to go ahead and draft Edge and add to their team. Just won the Super Bowl. So that's it. Here's a look at the whole draft here. Couple different surprises. I really don't think the Bengals are going to draft a wide receiver in the first round this year. I think the Bears, if they were able to get Ashton Jeanty, if he fell that far, I think they'd be over the moon thrilled with that. And we'll see if Shadur Sanders is able to do the big wristwatch celebration in the Big Apple. Yeah. Thank you guys for joining me today. Just wanted to go ahead and, put my my hat in the ring again with some mock drafts here. I know the mock draft is in a little less than a week. Joel and I are probably going to do a video here coming up where we talk about what we genuinely think is going to happen, and we go through the entire draft and whether it's trades and whatever we think is actually going to happen, kind of our joint predictions. So let me know if you guys like this video. Drop a like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.